Hello, this is Jim Edlin with the Foundry Publishing lesson for February 22, 2026. It's entitled The Sheep and the Goats. This is the final lesson in our series on the teachings of Jesus in Matthew, and I think it's been a great series. I feel like I've learned a lot, and I hope you have as well. Our focus scripture for today is Matthew 25, 31 through 46. It's one more parable from Jesus, and it's about the last days of human history, kind of like last week's. It, in some ways, is a perfect lesson as we begin the Lenten season and begin to focus on Jesus' journey to the cross and how we can become more like him. In this particular lesson, the truth is that Jesus calls his followers to show compassion for those who are in need. And of course, what we hope will happen to us as we study this is that we will become more like Jesus and find ways to care for needy people in our world. Jesus uses a very familiar scene for this parable, a shepherd with his sheep. You may realize that the Bible actually uses this imagery quite a bit. Think about Psalm 23, where David calls the Lord his shepherd, or in John chapter 10, where Jesus talks about being the good shepherd. Shepherding sheep, very common profession for the people in ancient Israel. Folks kind of knew a lot about it because they saw it all the time. But I don't know myself what was the difference between a sheep and a goat, so I had to go study that a little bit. A sheep is that cute, fluffy animal that grows wool and is relatively docile. The goat, not really quite as cute. It's kind of bearded and more angular, and it actually has hair, not wool. And it's certainly more mischievous and cantankerous to deal with. Both the sheep and the goats were exceptionally valuable commodities in the ancient world. Sheep, of course, for their wool, for clothing. The goats for the hair that they produce for making tents and water-resistant tents and carpets and sacks, etc. Their horns could be used for musical instruments. Of course, the milk from the goats was good food daily, and their meat then for both animals was seen as a delicacy. The skin could be used for writing materials and also for clothing, or actually putting liquids in like wine and making bottles. But also they were used in sacrifices to God. So this, of course, made them very valuable as well. Both sheep and goats needed guidance. They had many natural predators, and the sheep particularly needed help because they were very dependent. They could be easily attacked, led astray. They can't find really their own pasture. They need to go have someone lead them to food and to water. Actually, they're not the smartest animal in the world. I guess we do wonder sometimes why God keeps comparing us to sheep, but then we think about it and it begins to make sense. But the most important thing about a sheep, they followed the shepherd wherever he went. A friend of mine was telling me an experience he had while over in the Holy Land and watching a group of shepherds together, and then one made his way out from the group, and all of their sheep had been kind of mixed up together there. And he was a fair ways away, and he began to whoop and holler and whistle. And pretty soon, one little sheep came out, and then another little sheep came out. And as he continued to walk on, those sheep continued to follow. It's an amazing kind of thing. They know who to follow. The goats, on the other hand, quite a bit more independent. They tend to wander off, and they often will even lead sheep astray. And they are often wanting to choose their own path and their own kinds of food to eat. Well, the primary role of a shepherd, of course, was to watch over and protect and to guide both the sheep and the goats. So in this parable, Jesus uses the imagery of shepherding in order to paint a picture of the final judgment. So we see in verse 31 how Jesus talks about separating the sheep and the goats. Jesus compares the final judgment to the practice of separating sheep from goats, which usually took place every evening since they each had their own special needs. So Jesus tells us, when the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and goats on his left. Notice the images that Jesus provides for us of himself in these verses. He calls himself, first of all, the Son of Man, which is a reference to the messianic figure in Daniel chapter 7 and verses 13 and 14. The one who comes on the clouds and is given all authority by the Ancient of Days, by God himself, at the final judgment of all nations. Also, you see he's the king and the judge, sitting on his glorious throne, accompanied by an entourage of angels with him. And then as well, he is, of course, a shepherd who is watching over his sheep and separating them. What do these images communicate to you personally about Jesus when you think about it? Just reflect for a moment. Maybe one of them sticks out to you and is especially meaningful. Is it the promised Messiah of Daniel chapter 7? Maybe it's the image of the king judge of all nations. Or maybe it's the shepherd caring for his sheep. Another question you might want to ponder is, how do you feel about the last judgment scene? Are you okay with this picture of separating good from evil? Are you happy about that? Can't wait to see it happen? Or are you a little uneasy about it? Maybe kind of sad? Maybe even feeling fearful? Maybe mixed feelings? Whatever, you might want to think about that and discuss that with some other people. Well, verses 34 through 40 tell of the blessing for the sheep. Jesus says, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world." Notice what they receive. They receive the Father's blessing. Nothing greater than a father's blessing. And then also they receive their inheritance, the kingdom that was been prepared for them since the creation of the world. Sounds like a gift that God's been anxiously waiting for a long time to give to his sheep. And why are they so blessed? What's the criteria for judgment? Well, pretty obvious there in verses 35 through 36. These sheep, they fed the hungry, they gave drink to the thirsty, they welcomed the stranger, clothed the destitute, cared for the sick, and visited the imprisoned. Question we might ask ourselves as we look at these and think about it is, our entrance into heaven only about doing good deeds like these? Are we rewarded with heaven because we have cared for the poor, marginalized, the downtrodden? Or is there more to it than that? Do these actions maybe reflect something important about their hearts and the way they trust in Jesus? I'm wondering if we should understand this parable in light of other scriptures like that in the book of James, where he writes that faith without deeds is useless. His point, that faith needs actions to prove what we say we believe. So we might ask ourselves, what do these compassionate actions tell us about the faith of the sheep? Are they trusting Jesus to lead them wherever he needs to lead them and to whomever he leads them? Are they believing that Jesus will lead them where he wants them to go? And do they trust Jesus so much they want to be like Jesus? Well, here's some more reflections on that list of compassionate actions. You might ask yourself, what is like the easiest one for me to do? And then ask the question, which one would be the hardest for you to do? Does it help any that Jesus calls the needy his brothers and sisters? Those are his brothers and sisters, he says. Does it make it any easier to think that caring for the needy people is like caring for Jesus himself? Well, verses 41 through 46 then tell us about the condemnation for the goats. To the goats, Jesus says, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire, and be prepared for the devil and his angels." Obviously, GOAT is not an acronym for the greatest of all time. Maybe it's an acronym for the Grinch of all time, not sure. Goats are cursed here. They are told to depart from me into the fire prepared for the devil and his angels. Why? Well, the reason for condemning them: they did not feed the hungry. They did not give drink to the thirsty. They did not welcome the stranger. They did not clothe the destitute. They did not care for the sick. They did not visit the imprisoned. We must admit that ministry to folks with these kinds of needs can be very, very challenging. It is not easy ministry. Why is it that ministry like this is so challenging? Does it take kind of special kind of people to do this kind of ministry, or is it the kind of ministry that everyone can participate in some way? Well, as we conclude our lesson, let me ask you one more question. Would you rather be a sheep or a goat? One who follows the shepherd, or one who chooses his own path? In light of the parable, I'm pretty sure you're answering, I want to be a sheep. An important discussion question we could ask ourselves then is, how can we be more like these sheep? What can we do to help the needy people in our community? Are there agencies that we can support with our time as well as our money? And can I give you a warning here? God may very well give you an opportunity this week to apply this lesson in a very practical way. It's so interesting how that often happens. May we be the good sheep and follow our good shepherd wherever he leads, to whomever he leads us this week.